Susan Bassi.
Oh, Susan.
How are you?
It's been so long.
I know. How are you?
Yeah.
I'm doing a new podcast, Mommy Jail.
Mommy Jail?
And it's about what people in Gilroy knew about jail and what people in Los Gatos know about jail. So I'm here to get the B-reel from the farmer's market. You guys just happen to be in it.
Oh my God.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Welcome to Mommy Jail. I'm your host, Susan Bassi, and starting tonight, our short Eyes Optional podcast is moving to Sunday nights. And this week, we tackle the wives of newspaper editors, prosecutors, and married moms going to jail. Tonight, our story begins in 1989, when my husband and I moved to Gilroy shortly after we were married. It's a tale that weaves through small-town life, neighborly gossip, and a criminal justice system that eventually came knocking on the doors of people we least expected. When we moved to Gilroy, the town was a quiet agricultural hub of about 20,000 people. It was the kind of place where dial-up internet was cutting edge, kids on bikes favored dirt mounds near the river, and helmets were optional. Farmers market weren't a big thing yet, but they were a staple up north. We bought one of two homes we could afford on Laurel Drive. And across the street lived the newspaper editor and his first wife. It was a street where everyone knew everyone, and the unspoken rule was that your newspaper better be picked up by 10 a.m., or the grumpy retired neighbor would let you hear about it. The editor and his wife were married for several years while we lived there, but eventually it was one of those the wife is the last to know situations, and they ended up in a divorce after months of neighborhood gossip. But it wasn't until years later, when we moved to Gilroy, that we would encounter a much more shocking story. In 1989, as we moved to the southern part of the county, Alan, a prosecutor, worked for the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office and lived in Los Gatos. He once ran for judge, but lost, and as a prosecutor, he was known to make illegal recordings of trials and bring those recordings home for his wife to transcribe, giving him an edge in court the next day. He and his wife lived in a beautiful Victorian home in Los Gatos with their 4 children. And over time, the couple began acquiring antiques, often working their hobby into their family vacations. During the course of his career as a prosecutor, he planned to prosecute a San Jose police officer for assaulting his female partner. However, San Jose Police Chief McNamara quickly let him know that the department took care of their own. And shortly thereafter, when Alan and his wife were returning home with their children from a vacation, Alan got a call about a special antique he might want to buy. His neighbor's truck was perfect for the job, but since Alan couldn't drive a stick shift, his wife had to drive the truck down the hill, and Alan followed behind in the family minivan with the children. After deciding to buy the antiques the broker had offered, the couple drove back home. Alan led the way, but his wife was stopped by the San Jose police officers right in front of the Los Gatos home of the elected district attorney, Dennis Kennedy. San Jose police officers started asking Alan's wife about stolen property. She thought they were talking about the truck that she was driving and explained that it belonged to her neighbor and she had permission to use it. Despite her explanations, the police escorted her home, and instead of calling CPS, they asked a neighbor to watch their children. And then they began searching Alan's home for stolen property, while his wife tried to play gracious host, offering snacks and drinks to the police officers, unaware that her 13th wedding anniversary was about to become unforgettable for the wrong reasons. In the middle of their search, the San Jose police officers called the Mercury News right from Alan's home, announcing, "We've got the big fish." And moments later, Alan and his wife were in separate police cars headed to jail. That night, Alan sat through hours of interrogation while his wife listened from a jail cell on what should have been the celebratory night of their 13th wedding anniversary. The fallout was brutal. Alan was charged with felony burglary, and the arrest made headlines in the San Jose Mercury News and the LA Times. The morning after his arrest, Alan began to wrestle with embarrassment and depression. His wife had to put on a brave face and walk their children into their first day of school at Dave's Elementary, a baby on her hip and holding her children's hands and her head high. The principal was empathetic, but the other moms shunned her and turned their backs on her, and they began to gossip. Eventually, Alan took a plea deal that ended his career at the DA's office. He did community service at the Los Gatos Library while his wife started working in real estate to make ends meet. And years later, Alan filed for divorce. And what followed was a protracted legal battle that weaponized the family court and the system against the wife who had stood by her husband in his arrest. Unlike our old Gilroy neighbor, the editor, whose public court divorce was wrapped up in a year, Alan's divorce was entirely different. Private judges, endless lawyers, and tactics that felt designed to crush his wife. In our upcoming series, we'll dive into how family court intersects with the criminal justice system, focusing on children caught in the system. We'll spotlight the lawyers, the private judges who shaped cases like Alan's and others in Los Gatos. So join me next Sunday on Mommy Jail as we untangle these stories and explore the larger system at play. Until then, I'm Susan Bassi, reminding you to stay curious, stay strong, and stay out of court.